Hello, welcome to CripChat weekly podcast on everything disability. Tonight we're joined by Caitlin. Hello, Caitlin. Before we do get started, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi everyone, this is Caitlin speaking. I am a People with Disability Australia organisation member. So I come on behalf of the organisation, but I'm also joining you on the lands of the Wadawurrung people of the Daoud Nation here in Sydney. I actually come from the lands of the Gomeroi people in Tamworth. So it's a real privilege to be travelling through this country. I'm really excited to be here with you tonight. I am a young advocate for young people with disability in particular, but especially with a focus on intersectional policymaking, which I think we'll get to a bit later. But it's a real pleasure to be here.
So, give us a brief overview of the city and lesbian Mardi as a celebration of diversity and inclusion.
Caitlin speaking. So tomorrow I will be attending and participating in my second march with PWDA as a member, and I will be joining everyone in Sydney to participate in the Mardi Gras parade. I believe this year's theme for PWDA is Proud and Free to Be Me. So I come to that parade with that in mind, and also really excited to just join the community there and to share the space with everyone there.
So, this is the proud and free to be me theme chosen by PWDA members.
Caitlin speaking. Yeah, so firstly, this year's theme was chosen by PWDA members, and this really, really means something to the community. Not only does this bring lived experience, self agency, and empowerment to the forefront of the theme, but it highlights something that is important to the community now, and not something chosen on behalf of us, but something chosen by us. Which, to have pride in disability is seen as a radical act. So we live in a world that constantly tells us that disabled people can't do things. It tells us what we should do or how we should behave, what we're actually capable of, and sets expectations that they believe people with disability should or should not live up to, and especially who we are allowed to love. So for us, Mardi Gras is about showing up exactly as we are without having to fit anyone else's expectations. I think alongside this, it's also about freedom. It's not just personal freedom, but freedom from barriers. For too long, LGBTQIA plus spaces weren't, and some still aren't, accessible to us. And I think PWDA's presence in Mardi Gras sends a really clear message that disability belongs in Pride. It is also generally a call for society to remove the barriers that exclude us and stop us from fully participating in the community, especially in an intersectional way. And I think when I think about the exclusion of people with disability from these spaces, I think firstly of the empty seats at these tables, the conversations that are left empty as well, and the calls to action that come from misrepresentation of the natural diversity between people. And secondly, I think of the low expectations that people have of people with disability that underscores this. The belief that we cannot participate or have agency in these spaces, whilst we are a critical part of the conversation. And I think, as we all know, sexuality has often been a taboo topic, but even more so now for people with disability. And I think it is critical that we shift the narrative of low expectation, from some lack of humanness that people believe people with disability have, that is also implicit in our exclusion.
I like the planned participation of 80 PWDA members marching, winning, and rolling down Oxford Street, showcasing diversity within the disability community.
Caitlin speaking. Yeah, so this year PWDA is marching with 80 members, quite an astonishing number, and we'll be wheeling, walking, rolling, and dancing our way down Oxford Street. This will be my second year in a row marching with PWDA, as I discussed earlier, and I can tell you that we have an incredible group of people joining us in our community. We also have a real diversity of disability and lived experience. But what I love is that it's an opportunity for LGBTQIA plus people with disability to connect, be our full selves in a public space, and to express our pride. Alongside this, it's also the understanding that comes from sharing something in common, not necessarily a disability type, but the frustration that is shared between our community from systemic and social exclusion. And I think it's beautiful to share a fire, a passion, and a vibrant space full of joy and solidarity with people that truly understand. I think today, or tomorrow, I should say, is a day where we want to be visible. Our members will be wearing PWDA branded t-shirts, rainbow caps and capes, light up wings and outfits that celebrate every kind of body. And some of our signs say things like, I get horny too, challenging the idea that disabled people aren't sexual beings or can't make decisions about their sexuality. To love everybody, a reminder that we love our bodies, and disability rights now, because disability rights are human rights and they need to be upheld and realised. And we want an end to the restrictions and barriers that stop us from participating in our schools, workplaces, and communities.
Okay. Share insights about disabilities marching in the parade and the empowerment drives from being part of a supportive community.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really beautiful. I recently did an article with PWDA. It was published yesterday, and I think that encapsulated a lot of what I'm feeling right now. I think particularly politics at the moment is really divisive and can be really hostile to a lot of different groups within society. But I think something that gives me great hope is the resilience that we hold in our community. That I think, yeah, it helps ignite the fire in me when I feel like I'm too exhausted to do that myself. And so being able to march tomorrow and to honestly yeah, pull myself away from the torment of the rest of the world and to be so involved in such a beautiful way with our community is something that I really look forward to and something that I really, really enjoyed last year and am really excited to make the most of again this year.
A splendid concept to be proud of free and its relevance to LGBTQAI plus people with disabilities.
Yeah, Caitlin speaking. I think, again, I touched on this a bit in the article, but it's particularly unique to have pride and to feel free in being both disabled and a queer person. Um, Too often, the intersectionality of a lot of lived experience isn't recognized, and being able to, I guess, not necessarily overcome, but reckon with that internalized shame that comes from lived experience that is often stigmatized is a really beautiful thing. And I think that's what Proud and Free to Be Me encapsulates. It's recognizing that, you know, there is systemic, social, personal struggles that make up these identities and the complexity of these identities, but being able to reflect and still be proud and to still find freedom in yourself and your communities is what the theme means to me. And I think the fact that it was picked by PWDA members says a lot about its pertinence for this year's Mardi Gras.
This regards the unique obstacle at the intersection of ableism and homophobia, transphobia, including accessibility issues in LGBTQIA plus spaces and events.
Yeah, I think as I've touched on, intersectionality within itself means recognizing that people experience multiple and multiplying sometimes types of discrimination at once. So we can recognize experiences in isolation, for instance, disability and LGBTQIA plus lived experience, but together it leads to a multiply socially, systemically, and historically stigmatized and um, yeah, prejudiced experience. So I think being disabled comes with barriers, being LGBTQIA plus comes with barriers, and experiencing other levels of lived experience. Um, but when you're both, these barriers multiply a lot. For instance, queer bars aren't often LGBTQIA plus accessible. LGBTQIA plus health services don't always understand disability, and many disabled people are assumed to not have sexuality or not have sort of a sexual experience or a sexual identity. And so I think part of this fight is just recognizing us all for who we are and the unique challenges that we experience. Um, but I think that coming together in an environment like this and showing up and being proud and actually being loud about this means that we're in these spaces. So they have to be accommodating, they have to be accessible, or we will do our best to make them that way. And so turning up, I think, is the most important thing that we can do tomorrow, whether that be online or in person, and making sure and holding places accountable to make the spaces accessible. not just physically, but culturally and emotionally for us as well.
There's initiatives like free TV, proud event held on 19th February aimed at connecting LGBTQIA plus people with disabilities and fostering understanding within the disability community, within the broader community.
Yeah, so being a member of PWDA and seeing what I love about the organisation is that it is member led and therefore it's disability led. So the solutions that PWDA advocates for are the solutions that people such as me who are queer and disabled really want to see. It was really great to see that they'd actually been funded to be the peak LGBTQIA plus body for people with disability because right now especially we need really strong and systemics in individual advocacy. I think some of the changes I hope as PWDA members and people with disability we can work on together include national efforts to counter the dual discrimination and we experience and address both disability and LGBTQIA plus issues. This can include teaching the social model of disability and bringing human rights to the fore of this discussion. I think breaking down barriers and misconceptions about what it means to be disabled and queer in schools and workplaces that honestly should actively encourage inclusion of diverse bodies and identities within those spaces. I think we also need to challenge what cultural inaccessibility looks like and to advocate for inclusion both within the rooms that schools and workplaces exist within, but also the broader society, as these bodies, especially as peak social places within our communities, are influential parts of how our society functions today. I think also ensuring that the laws and regulations protect us against discrimination, including the Human Rights Act and making reforms to the Disability Discrimination Act. I think also training healthcare providers to provide respectful, informed, and accessible services to LGBTQIA plus people with disability, and making sure that these are co-designed with people with disability, with the interests of people with disability at the front of this change, and ensuring that there are platforms like Mardi Gras to make sure that we are seen and heard and represented in a radically accessible way, and to design spaces with us in mind, not just as an afterthought, but as an integral part of how these spaces are designed. Um, I think too, like you've mentioned in the question, a PWDA does a really great job at fostering spaces where people can come together, such as the Free and Proud to Be Me online event held on the 19th of February in 2025. It was a fantastic event because not all people can come in person. So it was a really great space for disabled LGBTQIA plus people to come together, to share their stories, to make connections, and to discuss what inclusion should look like. But ultimately, if have capacity and you can't be there in person, it would be beautiful if people could tune in to the parade on ABC tomorrow night. But I think, yeah, it's really important that PWDA exists and that it continues to create communities such as the ones that I've listed earlier, but in being able to reckon with events in the community and make sure that they're accessible for us all.
So, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, Caitlin speaking. I think we need to make sure that the changes that we're seeing are permanent. Oftentimes, with policy and politics, it can be very interchangeable, and I think we need to make sure that disability rights are non-negotiable, that human rights are non-negotiable, and they're not interchangeable with whoever is making this decision at the day. So we need to make sure that accessible queer venues exist all year round. So not when Mardi Gras is on, not only when Mardi Gras is on, but during the whole year. And I think this extends to all our community spaces. They need to be not only physically accessible, but culturally accessible as well. I think in also promoting this, we can definitely do better to make sure that performers with disability are in mainstream media. There's been a lot of campaigns for that recently, but I think that the cause for this change are deeply rooted in a need to not just promote equitable disabled representation, but to showcase the incredible talent of our community, and not in a charitable way, not necessarily highlighting that this is a disabled performer, but embracing that. So we want people with disability to be featured as equitable stakes and stakeholders in this industry, opposed to tokens. And I think by making opportunities for disabled performers accessible, you celebrate and embrace a larger, more diverse body of talent. And that in itself is a really powerful thing, but also just recognises the natural diversity amongst people. I think we also need stronger policies that protect disabled LGBTQIA plus people from discrimination, and really making sure to integrate an intersectional lens into this process. So not just keeping identities in isolation, but ensuring that the policies and protections and support that we have in place are from an intersectional place and do provide intersectional safety. And I think finally, we need more disabled voices in leadership, shaping the future of Pride events. And, you know, right now, there is in Perth the Disability Pride Fest, and I think that that is a really beautiful way for our community to come together. But I think not just giving people with disability a platform to co-design, but actually to make the decisions. We are the agents of our lives, and that needs to be reflected in the leadership that seeks to represent us.
Okay. Thank you. And good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
For now, you've been watching CripChat Weekly podcast on everything disability. Keep joining us next week as we discuss more things related to disability. Bye.